People are concerned about Christians gathering in this time. Easter is one of the most important days in the calendar for Christians. But even more than that, the reason why we don't not only gather is not only just for ourselves, uh, but to to see freedom being brought back to our whole society and nation.
Yeah.
People aren't upset that the school across the street has hundreds of kids there every single day, even though there's outbreaks in 12% of schools right now. No one's complaining that the schools are open, but they're complaining about churches. They don't see the value of the church, and really it's the church that has won freedoms in the West. And so people need to understand that the church is doing a good thing for everyone, whether they agree or not.
Keean Bexte for Rebel News outside of the Fairview Baptist Church here in Calgary, Alberta. This is one of the churches alongside Grace Life Church in Edmonton that has been routinely harassed by the police and bylaw officers, Nenshie's police and bylaw officers here in Calgary, and of course the RCMP up just outside of Edmonton for Grace Life Church. This church here has been opening their doors to everyone who wants to come in and partake in their congregation every Sunday. They've also been open for prayer services. And the pastor, Tim here, has a message that he wants to tell Jason Kenney. He, alongside a bunch of other churches, have banded together in a bit of a coalition of sorts at openalbertachurches.ca. You can check it out for yourself. And the message is pretty simple. No compromising, no excuses, no ifs, ands, or buts. All churches in Alberta should be open for religious services with no restrictions whatsoever by Easter. That is what they're asking. Actually, that's what they're demanding. And I'm here to speak to Pastor Tim about what exactly he wants here today.
Yeah, they came to our house last Monday. They handed me 2 more summons. So I think I've received 5 summons in total. And so it's my understanding that the first summons is up to a maximum of $100,000 and repeat offenses up to $500,000. So it could be over $2.5 million in fines so far.
You have started sort of a coalition of other churches at openalbertachurches.com, and you're calling on churches to be open for Easter. Is that correct? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so openalbertachurches.com is a place where people can go and see which churches are freely open. What we mean by open is not just open according to the guidelines and restrictions, but freely open. So if people want to wear masks or not wear masks, distance or not distance, they're free to come, no capacity limits or restrictions. And this will happen on Easter weekend. So whether Good Friday service or Easter Sunday, and we're calling other pastors to do the right thing, to open their churches and allow people to come and worship God freely.
Yeah. Now, lots of folks are saying, actually, just as I was standing here while you guys were worshiping, there was an individual that walked by saying, this is so inappropriate, it's so wrong, I'm so embarrassed. But they don't, I think that a lot of people don't gather, or maybe they haven't heard why it's so important for Christians to actually be physically present and gather in church. Can you explain that to people? Why is that a condition of the religion almost?
Well, I think we only hear one side of the narrative. We hear fear, we hear doom about this virus, but there are so many people that we hear that are just hurting because of all these lockdowns and restrictions, that want to come and they want to be human. And so there's that aspect of it. This is the general humanity of coming together with open face and being with one another as a group. And then, of course, as Christians, we get our orders from the Lord Jesus Christ himself, who is King over all kings, Lord over all lords. And he calls us to gather and to worship, and he sets the terms of those worships. He calls us to practice hospitality. He calls us to celebrate the Lord's Supper, he even says to greet one another with a holy kiss, to have this mutual time of fellowship. And so we don't have the right to begin to adjust how we gather as Christians. We need to follow the Lord Jesus Christ and what he has commanded. People are concerned about Christians gathering in this time. Easter is one of the most important days in the calendar for Christians. But even more than that, the reason why we don't not only gather is not only just for ourselves, but to see freedom being brought back to our whole society and nation. Yeah. People aren't upset that the school across the street has hundreds of kids there every single day, even though there's outbreaks in 12% of schools right now. No one's complaining that the schools are open, but they're complaining about churches. They don't see the value of the church, and really it's the church that has won freedoms in the West. And so people need to understand that the church is doing a good thing for everyone, whether they agree or not.
So this video will be published on Monday, and by then we will know what Jason Kenney is deciding to do with Alberta churches. On Monday, we're hoping in Alberta that the Stage 3 opening will happen. But, the point to take home, I guess, is that Pastor Tim doesn't really care. It's not on the government to decide what their religion dictates, what it says, what it requires of them. And he made it pretty clear. Gathering in person with open face, with in a hospitable environment is a prerequisite of being a Christian, and the government saying otherwise is infringement on their most basic rights. We're going to help you stay tuned with this story and up to date with what is going on with Pastor Tim and pastors across the province and indeed the country, as governments across Canada try their best to silence and step on the throats of Christians. For Rebel News outside of the Fairview Baptist Church, I'm Keean Bexte. Hey there, thanks so much for tuning into our coverage here at Rebel News. We are covering stories just like this across the province and the country. If you want to stay up to date with probably the biggest story we are covering right now, it is at savepastorjames.com. I recommend you go there and check out the blockbuster coverage that my colleagues have been doing, Sheila Gunn Reid and all of our cameramen who have been going in and out of Edmonton and the Grace Life Church, making sure that the mainstream media isn't the only ones with something to say about this story. Go check it out at savepastorjames.com.